24 hours before my son was supposed to say I do, his fiancée told me I don't. She said it with a sweet smile in the Heritage Park house I'd made the down payment on. "Melissa," she said, using my nickname, "we just want a fresh start. It's better if you just disappear." Welcome, everyone. Thanks for tuning in. I'd love to hear where you're listening from. Share your city below. Let's begin this journey together. The loudest sound in the kitchen was my son's silence. His fiancée, Brianna, had just told me the best gift I could give them was to disappear. And my son, Benjamin, my only child, just stared at his expensive sneakers while his future wife erased me from his life. He was looking at a pair of blinding white shoes that cost more than my first car, as if the answer to everything was written on the tips of them in invisible ink. Maybe it was. The answer was certainly not in his eyes. He wouldn't look at me. Brianna stood there leaning against the quartz countertop I'd picked out. The one David, my late husband, would have called foolishly expensive, but Benjamin had wanted it, and Brianna had insisted. So I wrote the check. She had a smile on her face, not a mean smile. That would have been easier. It was a sweet, pitying smile, the kind you give a child who doesn't understand why they can't have candy for dinner. "Melissa," she said, her voice dripping with that fake, syrupy concern. "You know we love you, but this is our time. We need to start our life. Fresh. Just the two of us. It would be so much better for everyone if you just weren't here for the wedding weekend." Disappear. It was a clean, sharp word, like a razor blade. It sliced right through the 65 years of my life, through the decades of working 2 jobs after David's shifts, through the scrimping and saving, through the belief that family was a fortress. She wanted me to vanish from the house built on the foundation of my husband's sweat and my own careful savings. A house in Heritage Park, Atlanta. A house they couldn't have afforded without the $95,000 I gave them for the down payment. My first thought wasn't anger. It was a strange, cold calm. Like a circuit breaker flipping in my soul, the lights of emotion went out and a different kind of power came on. They were expecting a scene. Tears. A fight. A guilt trip. I was a black mother in the South. I was supposed to be loud and full of righteous fury. They had a script written for me in their heads. I refused to play the part. I looked from Brianna's perfectly made-up face to my son's bowed head. I remembered David, his hands calloused from his work as a foreman, coming home covered in dust, saying, "Melissa, this is for the boy, so he has it easier." I looked at the sub-zero refrigerator they'd charged to a credit card I ended up paying off. They called my $95,000 a little help. They called the monthly bills I covered a gift. Now they were calling my presence a problem. "You're right," I said. My voice was even, quiet. It made both of them look up, surprised. I should go. I turned and walked out of the kitchen, my back straight. I didn't run, I didn't stomp. I walked up the carpeted stairs I'd helped pay to have installed, and went into the guest room they'd given me. My room. It was decorated in bland shades of gray and beige, like a hotel room you forget the moment you leave. My whole presence in their life had been decorated the same way, useful but without any real color or personality. I pulled my old leather suitcase from the closet. It was worn, but it was sturdy. Like me. I packed my sensible clothes, my Bible, my toiletries. On the nightstand was a framed picture of David and me, taken 20 years ago. He had his arm around me, and we were both smiling a real, tired, happy smile. I picked it up and whispered to him, "David, honey, I am not going to let them trample what we built. I am not." I tucked the photo into my purse, zipped the suitcase, and walked back downstairs. They were still in the kitchen, whispering now. They stopped when they saw me. Brianna looked relieved. Benjamin looked nothing. He was a ghost in his own house. "I'll be out of your way now," I said. I walked to the front door, opened it, and closed it gently behind me. The evening air was humid. I sat in my old Cadillac, a car that was paid for, a car that had never let me down. It smelled faintly of peppermint and old paper. My hands were steady on the steering wheel. I didn't cry. The time for tears was over. Now was the time for clarity. I pulled out my phone and dialed a number I knew by heart. It rang twice. "Simone," a sharp voice answered. "No hello, just her name." "Simone, it's Melissa." "Melissa, you sound calm. That worries me. What did those children do now?" Simone was my lawyer, but she was more than that. She was my sister in spirit. She didn't play games. "I need you to pull up the paperwork on the house in Heritage Park," I said, my voice low. "The one I helped Benjamin and Brianna buy." I could hear the clicking of a keyboard on her end. "I've got it right here in your file. The $95,000 gift letter." "That's the thing, Simone. They don't see it as a gift anymore. They see it as an entry fee I failed to keep paying. They just asked me to disappear." The clicking stopped. There was a dead silence on the line. "Say that again," Simone said, her voice now dangerously low. "They want me gone, so they can have a fresh start." "I see," she said. Another pause. "Melissa, stay in your car. Don't go anywhere. I'm going to look at the closing documents. The actual signed papers, not just the letter. There was something. Give me 15 minutes. The line went dead. I sat in the growing dark, the dashboard lights glowing softly. I looked at the big, beautiful house. A light went on in the living room. Through the window, I saw Benjamin open a bottle of champagne. Brianna raised a glass, her silhouette sharp and triumphant against the light. They were celebrating my departure, celebrating their victory. My phone buzzed in my hand. It was Simone. "Melissa," she said, and her voice was different. It was the voice of a hunter who had just found the trail. "You didn't give them a gift. You are smarter than that. David was smarter than that. We structured it as a secured loan against the property. Your $95,000 was not a gift. It was an investment." I held my breath. "You are not just their helper, Melissa Jefferson," Simone said, her voice clear and strong. "You are a 35% silent owner of that house. According to the documents they signed, you are their primary lien holder. They cannot sell. They cannot refinance. They cannot do a damn thing with that property without you." I looked back at the window. Benjamin and Brianna clinked their glasses together. A slow, cold smile spread across my face. "The game," I said softly to myself, "has just begun." My next words to Simone were precise. "On Monday morning," I said, my voice as steady as a rock, "I want you to deliver a notice of intent to sell the property. Send it via certified mail and courier. I want them to sign for it." "Consider it done," Simone said. There was a grim satisfaction in her voice. "What's your next move, General?" "A tactical retreat," I said. I hung up and scrolled through my contacts. My next call was to the Magnolia Hills Country Club, the place where the 200-guest reception was supposed to happen tomorrow. A cheerful young woman answered. "Hello, Magnolia Hills. How may I direct your call?" "Hello," I said, my tone polite and businesslike. "My name is Melissa Jefferson. I am calling about the Jefferson Hayes wedding reception scheduled for tomorrow, Saturday." "Of course, Mrs. Jefferson. We are so excited. Everything is ready to go." "There has been a change of plans," I said calmly. "I am canceling the event." There was a stunned silence. "Ma'am, you're canceling for tomorrow?" "Yes, I understand there will be a significant financial penalty. That is acceptable. Please charge it to the credit card on file, the one ending in 4228. "But the flowers, the catering," she stammered. "I am canceling my participation and my payment," I clarified. "You can bill me for whatever the contract stipulates. I will pay it in full." I dictated the card number again, feeling a wave of power with each digit. I wasn't destroying their wedding. I was simply withdrawing my resources. It was a business decision. I drove away from the house in Heritage Park without a single look back. I didn't drive to a friend's house or a relative's. I didn't want sympathy. I wanted solitude. I checked into a small, clean motel off the highway called the Peachtree Inn. The man at the counter was watching TV and barely looked at me. The room was simple. A bed, a table, a TV bolted to the wall. It was perfect. It was an anonymous sanctuary. I didn't turn on the television. I sat on the edge of the firm bed and ordered room service from the diner next door. I ordered shrimp and grits, a dish David and I used to eat on special occasions. When it arrived, I sat at the little table and took a bite. The grits were creamy, the shrimp was spicy, and for the first time in what felt like years, I could actually taste my food. I had been swallowing my anger and resentment for so long, it had numbed my senses. Now, they were waking up. Around 11 o'clock at night, my phone started to explode. It buzzed and lit up like a fire alarm. A string of texts from Benjamin. "Mom, where are you? Call me. The club just called. What did you do?" Then a call from a number I didn't recognize. I answered it. "What have you done?" The voice was a shriek. It was Brianna, and the sugary sweetness was gone. This was pure, raw hysteria. "You canceled our wedding. You ruined everything." I held the phone slightly away from my ear. "Hello, Brianna," I said calmly. "I need you to lower your voice." "Lower my voice? You destroyed my wedding day." "Let me be clear," I said, my voice cutting through her panic like a knife. "I did not cancel your wedding. I canceled my participation. There is a difference. You are free to get married wherever and whenever you like, just not on my dime." There was a scuffling sound, and then Benjamin's voice came on the line, frantic and angry. "Mom, this is insane. This is cruel. You have to fix this. Call them back. Tell them it was a mistake." "Was it a mistake, Benjamin?" I asked. "Or was it a consequence?" "What are you talking about?" "I'm talking about the light bill I paid last month so your power wouldn't be shut off. I'm talking about the $2,000 for your car repair. I'm talking about the $500 I slipped you 2 weeks ago to get you to your bonus. You two have been living on a long series of my mistakes." I could hear Brianna sobbing in the background. "Those were gifts," she screamed. I took a deep breath. "Well," I said, and the words felt like liberation. "Consider the philanthropist in me officially dead." I ended the call and put the phone on silent. I slept better that night in the cheap motel bed than I had in years in their gray and beige guest room. The next morning there was a knock on my motel room door. It wasn't loud or angry. It was hesitant. I looked through the peephole and saw my son standing there alone. He looked like he hadn't slept. His expensive clothes were wrinkled, his face pale and drawn. I opened the door. "Mom," he said, his voice hoarse, "can we please talk?" I stepped back and let him in, but I didn't offer him a seat. I stood with my arms crossed. "You have 5 minutes, Benjamin." "This is crazy," he said, running a hand through his hair. "You're burning everything to the ground over a few words. Brianna was just stressed. You know how she gets." "This isn't about a few words, and it is not about your wedding," I said, my voice low and firm. "This is about respect. You stood there in that kitchen, a kitchen I paid for, and you let that woman tell me to disappear from your life. You let her treat me like I was a service you were ready to discontinue. You decided I was a wallet with feelings that could be ignored. That's not a misunderstanding, son. That's a choice." He had the grace to look ashamed. He opened his mouth to speak, but my phone rang. It was an unknown number, but the area code was for the country club. I answered it, keeping my eyes locked on Benjamin. "This is Melissa Jefferson." "Ms. Jefferson, good morning. This is Mark from Magnolia Hills. I do apologize for calling on a Saturday, but I just received a very determined call from a Mrs. Naomi, Brianna's mother. She has offered to pay for the entire reception cost on her personal card. She wants to reinstate everything." I saw a flicker of desperate hope in Benjamin's eyes. He saw a lifeline, a way to fix this, to smooth it all over and pretend it never happened. He thought money was the point. I watched that hope in his eyes as I spoke clearly into the phone. "That is very gracious of her," I said, "but the cancellation stands." The light in Benjamin's eyes died. It was a terrible thing to see, but it was necessary. He had to understand that this wound couldn't be covered with a bandage made of money. He left a few minutes later, speechless and defeated. I felt a pang of sorrow, but it was overshadowed by a stronger feeling: resolve. At precisely 9 a.m., there was a much louder knock on my door. This time, it was 2 police officers. "Ma'am," the older one said, his expression neutral, "we received a call requesting a wellness check on a Mrs. Melissa Jefferson. Is that you?" My blood ran cold for a second, then hot with anger. They had called the police on me. It was a new low, a pathetic, desperate attempt to paint me as unstable. I gave them a calm, tired smile. "Yes, officer, that's me. Please come in." I invited them into the small room. I offered them coffee from the little machine, which they declined. I sat on the edge of the bed and explained the situation in simple, factual terms. "I have had a financial disagreement with my adult son and his fiancée," I said. "As a result, I chose to check into a motel to give everyone some space. I simply stopped financing their lifestyle, and they did not take it well. I am perfectly fine, just very disappointed." I saw a flicker of understanding in the younger officer's eyes. Calling in a wellness check under false pretenses can be considered a misuse of emergency services, I added quietly. The older officer nodded slowly. "I see." He pulled out a small card and a pen. "I'm required to file a report. Here's the incident number for your records." "Thank you, officer," I said, taking the card. "I appreciate you doing your job." As soon as they left, I took a photo of the incident card with my phone. I emailed it to Simone with a single subject line: "Documented. I'm fine." My next stop was the bank. I walked in, sat down with a personal banker, and systematically began to untangle my life from my son's. I closed the joint savings account we'd had since he was 16. I removed him as an authorized user from my main credit card. I placed fraud alerts and notification triggers on every single transaction over $50. My final stop was the phone company. I walked up to the counter. "I'd like to remove a line from my family plan," I said. The young man who helped me was sympathetic. After I explained which line to remove, he looked at me with pity in his eyes. "Ma'am," he said gently, "if you do that, you'll lose the family discount. Your monthly bill will go up." I looked him straight in the eye and gave him a small, genuine smile. "I know," I said, "but I'll keep my dignity." I spent the rest of that Saturday in a state of suspended animation. I didn't leave the motel room. I read a few chapters in my Bible and watched the traffic moving on the interstate below. Each car was a life, a story, heading somewhere. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I was heading somewhere too, even if I was just sitting still. On Sunday morning, a new number flashed on my phone. The area code was for Macon. I hesitated, then answered. "Is this Melissa Jefferson?" The voice was a woman's, older, with a formal Southern drawl that was both polite and unyielding. "This is she. This is Naomi Hayes," the voice said, "Brianna's mother." I braced myself for a wave of accusations, for a defense of her perfect daughter. I was ready for a fight. It never came. "Melissa," she said, and the formality softened slightly into something that sounded like weary respect. "I wanted to thank you." I was so surprised I didn't say anything. "I called the club yesterday," she continued, "because my first instinct was to fix it, to smooth it over. That's what we mothers do, isn't it? We smooth things over. When they told me you had refused my offer to pay, I was angry. For about 5 minutes, then I realized what you were doing." She paused, and I could hear her take a slow breath. "You aren't punishing them, Melissa. You are teaching them. You are showing my daughter who she really is, and for that, I owe you my gratitude. It's a lesson I should have taught her myself years ago." Tears pricked my eyes. Not tears of sadness, but of a profound aching relief. I wasn't alone on this island. "I will not be paying for their mistakes," Naomi said, her voice firm again. "If Brianna wants that house, she can learn what a mortgage is. If she wants a party, she can learn what a paycheck is for. You have my support. Do what you have to do." We talked for a few more minutes. We were two women from different worlds, a generation of mothers who had been taught to sacrifice everything, recognizing in each other the same quiet strength. We ended the call not as adversaries, but as allies. On Monday morning, just as promised, Simone sent me a document to sign electronically. The notice of intent. I signed it on my phone, sitting at the small motel table. Then I forwarded the official watermarked copy to Benjamin and Brianna with a short, simple message. All further communication should be directed to my attorney, Simone Fields. Her contact information is attached. The response from Brianna was almost immediate. A text message, seething with self-righteous anger. "Family doesn't do this. You can't just sue your own son. This is supposed to be a happy time. You're selfish, and you're trying to ruin my life." I typed out 3 different replies. The first was angry. The second was sarcastic. The third was dripping with hurt. I deleted them all. I thought about what Simone would do. She would use facts. I typed one final message and sent it before I could second-guess myself. Family doesn't ask a mother to disappear, then call the police when she does. She didn't write back. The meeting was set for Wednesday afternoon at Simone's office downtown. I wore a simple navy blue dress and the pearls David had given me for our 25th anniversary. I felt calm. I felt centered. I arrived first. Simone's office was on the 20th floor with a view of the whole city. It was a place of power. Simone greeted me with a hug. "Ready?" she asked. "Always," I replied. Benjamin and Brianna arrived next. They looked terrible. Brianna's eyes were puffy, and her expensive clothes looked thrown on. Benjamin looked like a walking apology. He wouldn't meet my eyes. They sat on the opposite side of the large mahogany conference table. Then, to my surprise, the door opened again, and Naomi Hayes walked in. She nodded curtly to her daughter, then gave me a warm, steady look. She sat down next to me. The battle lines were drawn, and they were not what my son had expected. Simone walked in and set a thick folder on the table. She didn't waste time with pleasantries. "Let's be clear about why we are here," she said, her voice commanding the room. "We are not here to discuss feelings. We are not here to use adjectives like fair or mean. We are here to discuss numbers. Melissa Jefferson is a 35% owner of the property at 1 of 14 Heritage Lane. She wishes to divest herself of that asset. You, Benjamin, and Brianna have the first option to buy her out. To do that, you need a new loan. To get a loan, you need to prove you are financially solvent, which brings us to this." She slid a single piece of paper across the table. It was a blank budget worksheet. "We need to see your plan," Simone said. "Show us your income, your assets, your liabilities, and how you intend to live within your means." Benjamin pushed forward a crumpled piece of paper. It looked like something they had scribbled in the car on the way over. It had their 2 salaries at the top and a few big expenses listed below: mortgage, car payments, utilities. I looked at it. I didn't need Simone to tear it apart. I could do it myself. "This is a good start," I said, my voice gentle but firm. They both looked up, surprised I had spoken. "But I have a few questions. Where in this budget are your gym memberships? The ones at Magnolia Hills?" Benjamin shifted in his seat. "Well, that's kind of—" "And the weekly manicures, Brianna?" I continued, my gaze steady on her. "And the meal delivery services? I don't see a line item for Uber Eats." They stared at the paper as if the answers might magically appear. They had no idea. They had been living a life funded by invisible money, my money, and they hadn't even tracked it. Simone leaned forward. "To buy out my client's share, you will need to secure a loan for approximately $140,000. To do that, a bank needs to see a real budget and at least 3 months of proof that you can actually live by it. What you have here, she said, tapping their crumpled paper, is a fantasy. Benjamin, trying to regain some control, cleared his throat. We can cut back, he said, his voice weak. We can. We'll sell the big green egg. Those things are worth a lot. We'll get rid of it. Simone gave a slow, deliberate nod. She looked like a judge considering a plea from a particularly foolish defendant. That's a start, she said, her voice dangerously soft. She reached into her folder and pulled out a single official-looking document. Speaking of things that need to be paid for, she slid it across the table. This is a mechanic's lien filed 3 weeks ago against your property. It's for $11,000. From the contractor who installed your kitchen backsplash. It seems he was never paid for his materials or labor. The color drained from Brianna's face. He was supposed to wait, she hissed. He said he would. Contractors tend to want to be paid for their work, Simone said dryly. Was this backsplash essential? Yes, Brianna insisted. The old one was hideous. It was necessary for the aesthetic. For the first time, Benjamin spoke up against her. His voice was quiet but clear. No, he said, not looking at her. No, it wasn't. The old one was fine. Naomi looked at her daughter, and there was no warmth in her eyes, only a cold, profound disappointment. It was a look that was more devastating than any yelling could ever be. So, Simone continued, letting the silence hang for a moment. That's an $11,000 debt you didn't include in your budget, but that's not the worst of it. She pulled out another document. It was a mortgage statement. She turned it around for them to see. The amount due box was circled in red ink. Your mortgage payment for last month is now 31 days late, Simone said. The words dropped into the room like stones in a quiet pond. That means this has already been reported to the credit bureaus. Your credit scores, which were already nothing special, just took a significant hit. An icy, deadening silence filled the conference room. This changed everything. This wasn't about cutting back on manicures anymore. This was about solvency. This was about the real world crashing down on them. But Simone wasn't finished. She was methodical. She was relentless. She pulled out one last set of papers. And then, she said, there is the matter of the HELOC. Brianna looked confused. The what? The home equity line of credit, Simone explained. You took one out 6 months ago, a loan against the value of the house. You were approved for $42,000. You've spent $38,000 of it. The payments on that line of credit, she added, tapping the page, are also past due. Naomi's voice cut through the air, sharp as steel. On what? She asked, looking directly at her daughter. What did you spend $38,000 on? Brianna stared at her hands, silent. All the fight, all the righteous indignation had evaporated. She was just a girl in over her head. Benjamin finally broke the silence. He looked at me, his eyes full of a misery so deep it almost made me want to reach out and comfort him. Almost. The ring, he mumbled, his voice cracking. It was for the ring. And other things. A trip. It was all out now. The whole ugly or rotten truth. Their beautiful life in their beautiful house in Heritage Park was a sham. A stage set for a play they couldn't afford, built with my money and the bank's, a cardboard house in a hurricane of debt. Simone leaned back in her chair, letting the weight of the confession settle over the room. With your current credit history, your debt-to-income ratio, and these outstanding defaults, she stated, her voice flat and factual, refinancing is not a possibility. No bank will touch you. Not right now. Brianna let out a small, choked sob. Benjamin just stared at the mahogany table, his reflection a blurry mask of failure. However, Simone continued, and they both looked up, clinging to that single word. My client is not an unreasonable woman. She is not interested in making you homeless. She is interested in teaching you a lesson in responsibility, so we are prepared to offer you a one-time, non-negotiable, 30-day armistice agreement. She made it sound like a treaty from a war, which felt about right. This is your only chance to avoid an immediate forced sale of the property, she said, looking from Benjamin to Brianna and back again. Here are the terms. She began to list them, point by point, her voice clear and precise. 1. Within the next 72 hours, by the close of business on Friday, you will bring both the mortgage and the HELOC completely current. That includes all late fees, no exceptions. 2. You will open a joint escrow account to be managed by a third-party trustee. Both of your paychecks will be deposited directly into this account. All household bills, mortgage, utilities, insurance will be paid from this account first. You will have no direct access to these funds. 3. You will provide us with a revised realistic budget within 1 week. This budget must include documented proof of all spending cuts. That means a receipt for the sale of the Big Green Egg, a cancellation notice for the club membership, everything. 4. Within 10 days, you must have your first meeting with an accredited credit counselor. We will choose the counselor. You will also formally apply for refinancing with a lender of our choice, even if we all know the application will be denied. We need a paper trail showing you are making an effort. She paused, letting the first 4 points sink in. Then she delivered the final, most brutal terms. 5. You will both sign a stipulated judgment for the partition and sale of the property. It's a legal document that says you agree to sell the house. I will hold it in my office. If you violate a single term of this agreement, if a payment is 1 day late, if you are caught hiding a single expense, I will file it with the court that same day, and the house will be put on the market. There will be no further discussion. And 6, she added, looking directly at Benjamin, any attempt to contact, harass, or emotionally pressure Melissa will nullify this agreement instantly. Any further misuse of emergency services will be met with a harassment lawsuit. Am I clear? The room was silent. Brianna finally found her voice, a whisper of her former defiance. This feels punitive. Simone didn't blink. No, she said, her voice like ice. It's protective of my client's asset and of her peace of mind. All eyes turned to me. I hadn't said a word. I just sat there, my hands folded calmly on the table. This was my answer. This was my boundary. It was not made of angry words, but of cold, hard, legal consequences. Benjamin looked up. He didn't look at Simone or at Brianna's mother. He looked straight at me. For the first time, I saw something other than weakness in his eyes. It was a glimmer of understanding, a flicker of shame giving way to resolve. He knew they were cornered. He knew this was the only way out. "We'll sign," he said, his voice clear and steady for the first time that day. "We agree to the terms." The days that followed the meeting at Simone's office were a slow, painful crawl into a new reality. Signing the papers was the easy part. Living them was the test. I retreated back to my quiet motel room, a silent observer waiting to see if the seeds of consequence would take root. 3 days later, my phone buzzed with a message from Benjamin. It was a photograph of a bank receipt, a cashier's check made out to the mortgage company for the full amount of the arrears, including every last cent of the late fees. Beneath the photo was a handwritten note on a yellow sticky pad. It had one word: beginning. I didn't reply. I just looked at the photo for a long time. It wasn't a victory. It was a single correct step on a mile-long journey. The next day, another message. This time, it was a screenshot of a Facebook Marketplace listing. The title read, "Big Green Egg Smoker Grill. Barely used, must go." He'd priced it to sell fast. A few hours later, another screenshot. "Tailor-made golf clubs, full set, excellent condition." A formal email arrived in my inbox with Simone copied. It was a confirmation from Magnolia Hills Country Club. The Jefferson Hayes family membership had been officially terminated. I started a new ritual for myself. Every morning I woke up, put on my walking shoes, and walked for 2 miles around a nearby park. I listened to the birds. I watched the seasons begin to change. I came back to my room, made coffee, and read a book. I deliberately did not check their bank accounts. I did not drive by their house. My part of this was to teach myself how to let go of the control I never should have had. My job was to save for my own future, not to manage their present. A week after the meeting, a new photo arrived from Benjamin. It was a picture of a shopping cart in a grocery store. It was filled to the brim, not with the organic brand name items I was used to seeing in their pantry, but with the stark reality of a budget. A large bag of store-brand rice, blocks of orange cheese, chicken thighs instead of skinless breasts, bags of dried beans. In the background, out of focus, I could see Brianna. She was wearing dark sunglasses, her back as straight as a board. She was there. She was part of it. The caption under the photo read, "Ran into Susan from the club." She looked in our cart and said, "Oh, trying something new?" Brianna looked right at her and said, "Yeah, we're trying adulthood." For the first time in a long time, a real, genuine smile touched my lips. The next Monday, Simone forwarded me a confirmation that the new escrow account was active and funded by their direct deposits. That evening, Benjamin sent a final picture for the week. It was a stark, almost violent image, a pair of kitchen scissors and a plastic card cut into 4 neat pieces. The store credit card from the place where they'd bought the $11,000 backsplash. The caption was short. Brianna cried, but less this time. They met with the credit counselor Simone had assigned them. Her name was Ms. Albright, a no-nonsense woman in her 60s who, according to Simone, could smell a financial lie from a mile away. The verdict was swift and brutal. With a 30-day late payment on the mortgage, a delinquent HELOC, the new lien, and their high debt-to-income ratio, no reputable lender would even look at their application for refinancing. Ms. Albright's professional opinion was blunt. They needed a minimum of 3 consecutive on-time payments on all their debts before a bank would even consider them a reasonable risk. The math was simple and unforgiving. Our 30-day armistice was now pointless. They couldn't solve a 90-day problem in 30 days. Simone called me that afternoon. "Well," she said without preamble, "we have a conflict of calendars. The real world is not conforming to our legal timeline. What do you want to do, Melissa?" I knew the answer. I had known it from the moment I understood the depth of their financial mess. This was never going to be a quick fix, but I let the silence sit. I wanted to hear her say it. This had to be a legal strategy, not just a mother's soft heart. "I can file the petition tomorrow and we can have the house on the market by next month," she offered, testing me. "No," I said. "That teaches them how to fail. I want to teach them how to succeed." "I thought you might say that," Simone said, a hint of warmth in her voice. "Okay, Plan B. We extend the agreement to 90 days, but we don't just give it to them. We make them earn it. We add stricter conditions, more skin in the game." The new terms were harsh. First, to secure the 90-day extension, they had to deposit an additional $5,000 into the escrow account as a security deposit, a good faith payment. If they successfully refinanced, they would get it back. If they failed, if they missed a single payment or broke a single rule, the money would be forfeited to me to cover legal fees. Second, we would be granted read-only access to their new escrow account. We would see every penny that came in and every penny that went out. Total transparency. No more hiding. The final condition was the toughest. The credit counselor had noted their income was insufficient for their debt load, even with the budget cuts. To make the numbers work for a future loan, their income had to increase. Documented proof was required. For Benjamin, that meant a guaranteed overtime schedule from his boss. For Brianna, whose influencer and freelance makeup career brought in sporadic, unreliable money, it meant something more concrete. She had to get a real, steady job, a job with a paycheck. Simone presented the new terms to them that afternoon via a conference call. I wasn't on the line. This was business. I waited. For hours I waited, expecting a refusal, expecting them to say it was too much, too hard, too humiliating. By the end of the day, Simone forwarded me a bank confirmation. $5,000 had been transferred into the escrow account. That evening, I got a call from Naomi. She's starting as a receptionist at the Belladonna Salon downtown, Naomi said, her voice a mixture of pride and disbelief. Full-time, benefits. Her first shift is Tuesday. The 90-day marathon began. Their life, which had once been a seamless scroll of social events and carefree spending, was now a spreadsheet. I knew because I could see the transactions in the escrow account, the automatic mortgage payment, the utility bills, the single modest grocery store charge once a week. Their refrigerator, once a shrine to gourmet leftovers and champagne, now wore a piece of paper with a handwritten meal plan. Benjamin sent me a picture of it once as a kind of grim joke. Monday, chili, Tuesday, casserole. Wednesday, chili again, taco night. Their to-do list, which used to be filled with things like confirm brunch reservation and pick up dry cleaning, now had new entries. Pack lunch for work, brew coffee at home, sell vintage handbag on Poshmark. On the whiteboard in their kitchen, Brianna's new work schedule at the salon was written in black marker where the list of wedding parties and social galas used to be. The changes didn't go unnoticed. In the Heritage Park Neighborhood online forum, a discussion started. Has anyone noticed the lawn at the Jefferson house? It's getting a bit wild. Someone else chimed in. I saw them unloading their own groceries the other day. I thought they used a delivery service. The digital gossip was just starting to bubble when a new comment appeared from a user named N. Hayes. It was Naomi. Her comment was short and devastatingly effective. Sometimes people's standards for their lawn go down when their standards for paying their bills go up. My daughter and son-in-law are working hard and meeting their obligations. I'm proud of them. The thread went silent. As part of the process, Simone ordered a new official bank appraisal on the house. The report came back and it was another dose of cold, hard reality. The house was worth a decent amount, but it wasn't a gold mine. The market had cooled slightly. There was no huge reserve of equity to borrow against, no magic number that would make them rich and solve all their problems. It was just a house, a nice average house with a big suffocating mortgage. One evening my phone rang. It was Brianna. She sounded exhausted. "This is so humiliating," she said, her voice quiet and thin. Working the front desk, scheduling appointments for women I used to have lunch with at the club. They come in and they look at me with such pity. I hate it. I listened. I didn't rush to comfort her. She needed to feel it. "You're looking at it the wrong way," I finally said. "Dignity isn't about what other people think of you. It's about what you know to be true about yourself. You're not losing face, child. You are building something no one can ever take away from you. You're building character. You're building a history of keeping your promises." There was a long silence on the other end of the line. "No one's ever talked to me like that before," she whispered. "They just gave me money." A few weeks later, Simone sent me another document. It was a receipt from the contractor who had placed the lien on their house. It was stamped in big red letters, "Paid in full." They had scraped together every extra dollar from Benjamin's overtime and Brianna's new paycheck, and they had cleared the debt. It was their first major victory. One dragon slain, many more to go. The 90-day marathon was a grueling slog through the mud of reality, but they were doing it. They were bruised and exhausted, but they were still standing. The 1st of December came, then the 2nd. They made their 3rd consecutive, on-time mortgage payment. They had cleared the lien. They were following the budget. They were on track. The finish line was in sight. The closing for their new refinancing loan was scheduled for December 15th, 1 week away, and then the bank sent over the final conditions for closing. It was a standard list, but for them, it was a death blow. It wasn't enough that their payments were current. To mitigate the bank's risk, they had to pay down their outstanding HELOC balance by an additional $6,500, and they had to establish a new post-closing reserve fund, cash and a savings account, equal to 2 months of mortgage payments, which came to $5,200. In total, to get to the closing table, they needed to produce nearly $12,000 in cash. In 7 days, it was an impossible number. The escrow account was balanced to the penny every month. There was nothing left. They had sold everything of value. There was no secret stash of cash to save them. And then, as if on cue, the universe decided to laugh at their plans. Brianna's 10-year-old car, the one she needed to get to her job at the salon every day, broke down. The transmission was gone. The mechanic was blunt. "It's $1,200 to fix it," he said. "It's either now or a catastrophic failure on the highway later." That night, Benjamin called me. His voice was stripped of all pride. It was the voice of a man at the absolute end of his rope. I could hear the exhaustion, the panic, the crushing weight of it all. He laid out the numbers, the bank's demand, the car repair. He laid it all out like a man showing a doctor a fatal wound. He never once asked me for money. But the question hung in the silence between us, thick and heavy. "Are you going to save us? After all this?" This was the final test, not for them, for me. It would have been so easy to write a check, to be the hero, to end their suffering. But I finally understood that saving them from the pain would be the cruelest thing I could do. The pain was the point. The pain was the teacher. "Benjamin," I said, my voice quiet but unshakable, "you have the budget, you have the numbers. You and Brianna need to sit down at your kitchen table and figure out what you are going to do. This is your problem to solve." "Mom," he whispered, and his voice broke. "There's nothing left to move." "Then you have to get more creative," I said. "I trust that you will. Call me when you have a plan." I hung up the phone, and my hands were shaking. It was the hardest thing I had ever done. What followed was a flurry of desperate activity. I saw it in the texts Benjamin sent, not to me, but to a group chat he had created with me and Simone, for official updates only. He posted a photo of a receipt from a pawn shop for his father's old watch, the one I had given him for college graduation. It hurt to see, but I didn't intervene. Brianna started selling the remnants of her old life online. I saw a listing on a wedding resale site for 120 silk peony centerpieces and a custom-made veil, still in its box. She was literally selling the ghost of the wedding that never happened to pay for the marriage that was trying to survive. Naomi called me. "I offered them a loan," she said, her voice tight with worry. "They turned me down." Benjamin said, "Thank you, Naomi, but we have to do this ourselves." "What is happening to them, Melissa?" "They're growing up," I said softly. By Friday afternoon, the day of the deadline, they were still short. They had raised a little over $5,000. They needed almost $7,000 more. They were at a dead end. They had failed. We were all back in Simone's conference room. It felt like the final scene of a play. Me, Benjamin, Brianna, and Naomi. Simone sat at the head of the table, her expression grim. "The bank's position is firm," Simone said, her voice leaving no room for argument. "If the funds are not in escrow by 5 p.m. today, the loan offer is rescinded, which means our agreement is void. I will file the partition on Monday morning, and the house will be listed for sale in January." Brianna stared down at her hands, her shoulders slumped in defeat. "We have nothing left to sell," she whispered. The room was quiet. Then Naomi spoke, her voice soft but clear. "There's one thing." Every eye in the room moved to Brianna's left hand. Resting on her finger was the enormous, glittering diamond engagement ring, the one that had started it all, the one bought with the line of credit that had pushed them over the edge. It was a beautiful, sparkling, expensive lie. Simone leaned forward, her voice direct but not unkind. "Brianna, That ring is an asset, a significant one. Your house, your future costs $12,000 this week. What do you choose? The diamond or a roof over your head? Benjamin reached across the table and took Brianna's hand. His grip was firm. "We choose our family," he said, looking at her, his eyes pleading. "Right now. We choose what's real." Brianna looked at the ring, the symbol of the dream she'd almost destroyed them for. A long, shuddering sigh escaped her lips. A tear rolled down her cheek and fell onto the table. And then, after a long, painful pause, she nodded. "Okay," she whispered. "Okay." Simone was already on the phone. "David," she said into her receiver, "I'm sending a client over, the daughter of a friend. She has a diamond she needs to sell. Give her a fair price, a real price." An hour later, Brianna and Naomi were in a jeweler's office downtown. My phone buzzed. It was a series of photos from Naomi. The first was of the ring sitting alone on a black velvet pad, impossibly bright under the jeweler's lamp. The second was of Brianna's left hand, now bare. The third was a copy of a wire transfer confirmation, $9,800 deposited directly into their escrow account. It was done. On December 15th, we all met at the title company's office for the closing. The air was thick with a nervous, electric energy. On Brianna's finger was a new ring, a thin, simple, unadorned gold band. It looked more beautiful than the diamond ever had. The escrow officer, a woman with tired eyes, slid a stack of papers toward them to sign. Then she slid a check across the table to me. My check. It was for $126,482.13, the full and final amount of my share, my investment, my legacy. Benjamin and Brianna signed the papers for their new loan. The interest rate was higher than it should have been. The payment was tight, but it was theirs. They were the sole owners of the home on Heritage Lane. As we were packing up our papers, Benjamin stopped me. He handed me a sealed envelope. "Mom," he said, "this is for you." I opened it later in the quiet of my car. It was a letter written in his familiar scrawl. "Mom," it began, "for years I thought love was about making things easy for people, covering for their mistakes, paying the bill so they wouldn't have to feel the pinch. I thought that's what you were doing for me, and I let you. I took it for granted. Now I know that isn't love. That's just enabling. Real love is hard. It's about exposing the ugly truth so you have a chance to fix it. It's about letting someone feel the consequences of their choices so they can learn to make better ones. Thank you for loving me enough to let me almost lose everything. You didn't give me a house. You gave me a foundation. I promise I won't waste it." 6 months later, I was sitting on the balcony of my own apartment, a sunny one-bedroom place I had decorated myself in shades of blue and cream. My ficus plant, the one I'd bought the day I moved in, had sprouted 3 new leaves. It was reaching for the sun. I had enrolled in a furniture restoration class at the local community college. I was learning to work with my hands, to strip away old varnish and see the beautiful grain underneath. It was honest, satisfying work. Every month, I deposited a portion of my money into a new account I'd named Melissa's Bold Idea Fund. I wasn't sure what the bold idea was yet, but I loved knowing the possibility was there. Benjamin and Brianna didn't become saints overnight. They became something much better, a normal married couple with a mortgage. They argued about who left the wet towel on the floor. They celebrated when they had enough money left over at the end of the month for a pizza. It was a small, quiet, authentic life, and it was a miracle. They invited me over for Sunday dinners sometimes. I went when I wanted to, not because I felt I was supposed to. We ate spaghetti with store-bought sauce, and it tasted better than any fancy meal at the country club. There was no performance. There was just family. Benjamin got a promotion at work. His boss told him he'd become calmer under pressure, more responsible, a leader. Brianna was still at the salon. They had offered her a promotion to shift manager. She was good at it. She was organized, efficient, and surprisingly good at handling difficult clients. She had found her footing in the real world. One afternoon, I went to the salon and let Brianna do my hair. We made small talk about the weather, about my furniture class. She worked with a quiet, focused professionalism. Her hands were confident as she moved the brush and the dryer. She was no longer a spoiled girl playing a role. She was a woman who worked for a living. On the first anniversary of their canceled wedding, they invited me to their house for dinner. No party, no guests, just the three of us. After we ate, Benjamin brought out a small, homemade cake with a single candle on it. "Sometimes," Brianna said, looking at the flame, "I think about that big, crazy party we were supposed to have, all those people, all that food, the flowers." She paused and looked around her kitchen, the same kitchen where she had asked me to disappear a year ago. "And then," she said, a small, genuine smile on her face, "I get up in the morning and I come into this kitchen and I make a pot of coffee that I bought with money that I earned, and I realize that this is so much better." I appreciate you staying with me through this story. If it reminded you of something in your own life, or if you just want to share how it made you feel, leave a comment. I'd love to read it. Your stories are important. And if you enjoyed this, please like the video and subscribe for more. Stay kind to yourself, and see you soon.